Welcome everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's presentation. Today, we will explore a profound hadith that sheds light on the journey of the soul before birth and the divine decree that shapes our lives. We will discuss the stages of fetal development, the role of the angel, and the 4 decrees that are written for each of us: our sustenance, lifespan, deeds, and ultimate fate. This understanding helps us reflect on the importance of our choices and the mercy of Allah. Let's begin our journey into this meaningful subject. In this slide, I want to draw your attention to an important point about the hadith and the text we often see. You might notice that it states, "Surely, each of you is brought together in his mother's abdomen for 40 days in the form of a drop of fluid," or nutfa. Now, here's the key issue. The word nutfa is actually a mistake, and it's not part of the original hadith. Al-Qadha pointed out that this word has been incorrectly added to the text. It doesn't appear in any of the authentic sources of the Sunnah. Instead, it appears in some later writings, like in Hadith number 4 of Al-Nawawi's 40 Hadith. It seems that this addition was made to clarify the sentence, but over time, people began to think that nutfa was part of the Hadith itself, and they included it as such. The important thing to understand is that this small change actually affects the meaning of the hadith. The original text makes it clear that the stages of fetal development, nutfa, alaka, and mudga, happen within the first 40 days. However, with the added word nutfa, some interpretations suggest that these stages occur over the first 4 months, which is not accurate according to modern science. This is a good example of how even small textual errors can lead to misunderstandings. And it's also a reminder of the scientific miracles found in the hadith, as the original narration aligns perfectly with what we now understand through scientific research. This hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, describes some of the different stages of human development. As we will see later, many valuable lessons can be drawn from these stages. It is, Allah knows best, the reason why Allah has mentioned these stages at different places in the Quran, and why the Prophet, peace be upon him, also mentioned them in various hadith. Understanding these stages helps us gain a deeper insight into human growth and our spiritual journey. It ties into the overall theme of continuous learning and self-improvement that runs throughout this presentation. Recognizing these stages allows us to reflect on our own development and to appreciate the wisdom behind Allah's design for human life. After the male sperm enters the woman's body, it then joins with the egg in the womb of the mother. What's fascinating here is how this process is described by Al-Qurtubi, who suggests that the sperm enters with force and drive, then has to travel some distance before reaching the egg. This highlights the incredible journey that takes place, a journey that's not random, but part of a divine plan. When the sperm and egg finally meet, they are brought together at just the right time and place. The commentators on this hadith emphasize that this expression, brought together, also implies that they are being guarded or preserved during this process. It's as if Allah is carefully overseeing this union, ensuring everything happens at the right moment. This is a profound point because it shows how much precision and care is involved in creation, and how Allah's will governs this entire process. Albar further describes how, after the sperm enters the female body, this entire process unfolds under divine guidance. It's remarkable to realize how Allah has designed this system so that the egg and sperm are not only brought together, but are also protected and preserved until they meet. So when we say brought together, we're not just talking about a simple union, we're witnessing a divine orchestration, a testament to Allah's power, wisdom, and mercy in creating life in such a perfect and guarded manner. Let's take a closer look at this slide. The key word in this hadith that the Prophet used is batin, which means the stomach or abdominal region. Now, it's important to understand that in this context, batin doesn't refer specifically to the womb where the fetus develops. In Arabic, the word for that is rahim, or womb. However, the womb is considered part of the broader area we might call the stomach or abdomen. So, what we're seeing here is an example of how sometimes language can be a bit broad, mentioning one part, but actually referring to a more specific part within that area. In this case, although the word batin is used, it's understood that the real focus is on the womb or rahim. Interestingly, in other narrations of the same hadith, the word rahim is explicitly mentioned. This highlights a common feature in Arabic, using broader terms to encompass more specific ones, especially in religious or poetic contexts. And connecting this to our overall theme, it reminds us of the importance of understanding the nuances of language when interpreting texts, especially sacred ones. Recognizing these subtle differences helps us grasp the full meaning and significance behind the words used. Today, I want to emphasize that, according to the Quran, the very first stage of human development is what we call a nutfa. Now, the word nutfa literally means a drop of fluid, which highlights the starting point of human creation. But, as Albar has pointed out, this term isn't limited to just one meaning. It's used in different senses within the Quran and Hadith, and understanding these is quite important. There are three main connotations we should be aware of. First, the male nutfa, which refers to the male gamete or sperm. Second, the female nutfa, representing the ovum or egg. And third, the scenario where the male and female nutfa are intermixed in the womb of the mother, leading to conception. All of this underscores how the initial stage involves a combination of these elements, marking the very beginning of human development. This concept connects to our overall theme of understanding the profound process of human creation in Islamic teachings. Let's take a closer look at the term mudga, which in Arabic means a chewed lump or something that has been masticated. This imagery helps us understand what is happening at this stage of development. During this period, what develops are the somites, which are these segmented structures that form along the developing embryo. These somites are incredibly important because they give rise to much of the axial skeleton, like the vertebrae, and the musculature of the body. If you look at these somites under a microscope or in early images, they resemble a series of indentations or bumps that are fairly evenly spaced out. Think of them like a piece of flesh that has been bitten into, with teeth marks still visible. These indentations look very much like that. All of this development, from the formation of the somites to the differentiation of tissues, takes place quite rapidly, and by the 6th week, so that's about 42 days after conception, this process is essentially complete. Understanding this stage is crucial because it marks the beginning of the formation of the body's structural framework, which will develop into the skeleton and muscles that support our entire body. In this slide, I want to highlight an interesting point about the wording used by the Prophet, peace be upon him. He specifically said the angel, not an angel. This distinction is quite meaningful. It suggests that the role of looking after or taking care of the fetus isn't assigned to just any angel, but to a specific, designated angel. This implies a sense of order and importance in the process of development even before birth. When we hear, the angel is then sent to him, it emphasizes that this is a special, purposeful act. The angel is sent to the fetus to oversee its growth and development, highlighting the divine care involved in this process. Connecting this to our broader theme, it underscores the significance of divine intervention and care from the very beginning of life. It reminds us of the intricate and purposeful design behind human creation, with specific angels assigned to watch over us even before we are born. So when exactly does this occur? Well, according to the teachings, it happens after the nutfa, or fertilized egg, has been in the womb for about 4 months and 10 days. That's when the ruh, or spirit, is breathed into it. But what exactly is this spirit or ruh? It's important to understand that very little is known about how the soul works internally. We do know that a person is alive when their ruh is connected to their physical body, and they pass away when the ruh leaves the body. Now, a common question arises. Does the breathing in of the ruh mean the beginning of human life? Interestingly, neither the Quran nor the Sunnah explicitly states that the moment the ruh is breathed in marks the start of life. For example, the Quran mentions, and he breathes into him the spirit, but this doesn't necessarily define the exact moment life begins. It's a subtle point that invites reflection and understanding of the nature of life and the soul in our faith. So, in the broader context of our presentation, this highlights the mysterious and divine nature of life's beginning, reminding us of the profound connection between the physical and the spiritual. Let's talk about an incredible aspect of our faith that highlights Allah's all-encompassing knowledge. The angels record everything about us even before we are born, while we are still in the womb. This isn't just random. It's a reflection of Allah's perfect pre-knowledge of everything that will happen in this universe. We discussed this concept earlier when we talked about Al-Qadr, the divine decree, and this recording is directly linked to that belief. Now, focusing on sustenance, this is a key point. The Hadith tells us that not only is the amount of our provisions written down, but it also notes whether those provisions come from lawful or unlawful sources. This emphasizes the importance of earning and consuming in accordance with Islamic principles. And what about our lifespan? It's fascinating to realize that the exact length of our life is also written down while we are still in our mother's womb. This reinforces the idea that everything is known to Allah, yet we are still encouraged to live righteously and make the most of the time given to us. The slide also mentions that Allah is commanded to issue 4 decrees, which ties everything together. But what's most important here is understanding that Allah's knowledge is complete and that every detail of our existence is preordained, yet our choices still matter within that divine framework. Now, let's focus on what happens at that critical moment. The person's individual deeds will be recorded at that time. These deeds are essentially a reflection of everything they've done throughout their life. But what's really interesting is how the angel will record their overall state, whether they are happy or unhappy. The angel simply notes one of 2 words, either fortunate or miserable. According to Ibn Hajar, this recording is straightforward, just one word, based entirely on how the person ends their life. This highlights the importance of the final moments and how they can influence the overall judgment. Additionally, the person is also commanded to issue 4 decrees, which are significant in understanding divine justice and mercy. Throughout this process, the focus remains on how our actions and the way we end our lives can determine our ultimate fate. It ties back to the overall theme of accountability and the importance of sincere effort and righteous endings. In this hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, describes a person who has spent most of his life performing deeds that would lead him to paradise. It highlights how consistent efforts over a long period can bring someone close to salvation. However, just before his death, something significant happens. As recorded for him even when he was in the fetus, he changes his actions. Instead of continuing to do the deeds of the people of paradise, he begins performing the deeds of the people of hellfire. This change is crucial because it shows how close he was to entering paradise, almost within reach, as if the only barrier was his death. But what's very important here is that he did not persist in doing good deeds until the end. Instead, he changed his behavior, and that shift cost him his place in paradise. It's a powerful reminder that our final actions, especially at the time of death, can determine our ultimate fate. This hadith emphasizes a key point about judgment. A person's final beliefs and actions at the time of death are what truly matter. It's not just about the deeds performed over a lifetime, but about the state of the heart and actions at the very end. To put it simply, the Prophet, peace be upon him, swears by Allah that even if someone has performed the deeds of paradise almost until the very last moment, if they change at the end and begin doing the deeds of hellfire, their record will overtake them. They will end up entering hell instead. So this teaches us the importance of maintaining our good deeds and sincere faith until the very last breath, because our final actions can make all the difference in our eternal outcome. On slide 13, let's explore some key issues related to abortion from an Islamic perspective. The Hanafi school has specific views on abortion before the soul is breathed into the embryo, which is generally considered to be before the 120th day of pregnancy. They say that if human features, like a face or limbs, are not yet apparent on the embryo, then there is no sin involved in abortion at this stage. Essentially, until those features develop, the embryo isn't regarded as a fully formed human being in this context. However, there's an important nuance within the same school. If features are visible, then abortion is viewed differently, and the person responsible, whether the mother, father, or someone else, would be considered sinful for terminating the pregnancy. This highlights how the issue is complex and depends on the developmental stage of the embryo. These rulings reflect a balance between respecting potential life and understanding biological development. Connecting this to our broader theme, it shows how Islamic law carefully considers the stages of fetal development and the moral responsibilities involved. It's a nuanced approach that emphasizes the importance of intention, development, and context in making ethical decisions about abortion. Let's explore some key perspectives on the question of abortion in Islamic thought. According to Imam Malik, even a small clot of congealed blood, a morsel of flesh, or what is recognized as offspring, is considered a future soul. Violating the sanctity of that potential life, he argues, warrants the imposition of ghurra, which is a form of penalty or atonement. Moving to Al-Ghazali, a follower of the Shafi'i school, he believes that the first stage of creation begins when the sperm from the man enters the woman's ovary, setting the stage for developing into a living being. Any interference that disrupts or spoils this process is viewed as a serious felony, emphasizing the importance of preserving the developmental process from its very inception. Meanwhile, the Hanbali school offers a different perspective. They hold that if a woman aborts something that doesn't yet have human features, she's not considered to have committed a sin. This highlights how different schools interpret the moral and legal boundaries around early stages of pregnancy. As we connect these viewpoints to the broader theme of the presentation, it becomes clear that Islamic jurisprudence varies in its approach to abortion, often based on the developmental stage of the fetus and the intent behind the action. Understanding these perspectives helps us appreciate the nuanced and diverse interpretations within Islamic thought on this sensitive issue. Today, I want to discuss some important aspects of the question of abortion from an Islamic perspective. First, it's crucial to understand that abortion is sometimes permitted when there's a real concern for the health of the pregnant woman. This includes situations where continuing the pregnancy might jeopardize her physical or mental well-being, or in cases involving serious Sharia legal reasons, such as when the pregnancy results from rape. In these circumstances, abortion is considered permissible due to what we call Sharia exigency, meaning there is a necessity that overrides other considerations. On the other hand, there's a different scenario that's more controversial. Some might think of abortion as a form of birth control to avoid financial burdens or expenses. However, in Islamic law, this is generally not permitted. Why? Because it falls under the prohibition of killing children out of fear of poverty, either for the child or for the parents. The emphasis here is on the sanctity of life and the importance of trusting in Allah's provision. Connecting these points to the broader theme of our presentation, it's clear that the Islamic approach to abortion is nuanced and deeply rooted in principles of mercy, necessity, and the preservation of life. It's essential to consider each case carefully, understanding the difference between situations that necessitate allowance and those that do not. Let's now consider a third category of reasons behind abortion. Sometimes, a woman might choose to have an abortion not because of the life-threatening or severe fetal conditions we discussed earlier, but for other personal reasons. For example, she might want to delay giving birth as long as possible, perhaps to preserve her youth or her physical appearance. Or, she might be prolonging her marriage without actually having a child, especially if she suspects that divorce is likely. It's important to understand that, from an Islamic perspective, abortion for these kinds of personal reasons is generally not permissible. The core idea here is that abortion should not be used as a means to fulfill superficial or selfish desires, especially when it involves delaying or avoiding the natural process of childbirth. This ties back to our overall theme of responsible and ethical decision-making regarding pregnancy and abortion. It highlights the importance of considering the spiritual and moral implications, not just the personal or societal ones. By understanding these nuanced issues, we can better appreciate the moral boundaries set by our faith and how they guide us in making righteous choices. Today, I want to talk about the funeral prayer for the aborted fetus, which is an important aspect of Islamic fiqh. According to the majority of scholars, if a fetus is aborted, or if a miscarriage occurs after the soul, or ruh, has been breathed into it, then performing a funeral prayer is necessary. It's also important to note that most scholars believe the ruh is breathed into the fetus after approximately 120 days of pregnancy. This means that if the fetus is aborted after 120 days, any part of the fetus that comes out of the woman should be buried properly, and a funeral prayer should be performed for it. Ibn Uthaymeen, a respected scholar, mentions that if the fetus is lost before 120 days, it's considered just a piece of flesh, so it doesn't require washing, shrouding, or a funeral prayer, since it hasn't yet become fully human in the eyes of many scholars. However, there are varying opinions. Some scholars believe that if the fetus is believed to have the soul breathed into it after 40 or 45 days, then the funeral prayer should be performed for any fetus aborted after that time. Additionally, some scholars state that the funeral prayer is only to be performed if the child is born alive and cries at least once, emphasizing the importance of life and its signs. Connecting this to our overall understanding, these rulings highlight the importance of the soul's presence and the status of the fetus at different stages of pregnancy. It reminds us of the compassion and care prescribed in Islam for all stages of life, even in cases of miscarriage or abortion. This slide reminds us that this hadith is one of the many miracles in the life of the Prophet, SAW. It serves to reinforce the unwavering credibility of the divine revelation, the Quran. What makes this hadith particularly profound is that it encapsulates the entire journey of human life, starting from nothingness. It highlights the early relationship between the physical and spiritual aspects of our existence, showing how a simple piece of flesh, or mudga, is infused with the spirit, or ruh. From there, it emphasizes that man must navigate a life that's already been predetermined by al-qada wal-qadar, meaning our destiny is already written. But at the same time, we're given free will, which makes our actions crucial, as they can sway us or lead us astray with significant consequences. And at the end of this journey, we return to nothingness at death, which reminds us of the transient nature of worldly life. This hadith, through its depiction of embryonic stages and predestination, beautifully illustrates both our physical makeup and the abstract, spiritual components that define us. So, in essence, it summarizes the entire human experience, our beginning, our journey, and our ultimate return. All of this connects back to our overall theme of understanding divine wisdom and our place within it. Today, I want to emphasize a profound concept about Allah's foreknowledge and its impact on our lives. Even before we are born, while we are still in the womb, an angel records many details about us, our provisions, our lifespan, our deeds, and whether we will ultimately be happy or miserable. This recording reflects Allah's perfect knowledge of everything about us. An important point to remember is that the deeds we perform at the time of our death are what truly determine our final fate, whether we will be among the people of paradise or the people of hell. It's not enough to rest on our past deeds alone. We must continually strive and work hard in our conduct and actions. Our behavior at the moment of death is crucial because that is what Allah will judge us by. There is also hope and mercy in this understanding. A person might be performing actions that lead to hell, but through Allah's mercy, they could be guided to perform good deeds and turn their life around. If they do, they can become among the people of paradise. Conversely, the opposite can happen. Someone who seems to be on the path of righteousness might falter. All of this, our deeds, our intentions, our potential, has already been recorded for us since the time we were in our mother's womb. So, it underscores the importance of constantly striving to improve ourselves and be mindful of our actions, especially at the end of our lives. It reminds us that our ultimate success depends on Allah's mercy and our sincere efforts at every moment.